So as of this recording, we still don't have concrete launch details about the Steam Machine beyond just knowing that it's coming in Q1 2026. But even though I can't order one just yet, that doesn't mean that I'm not anxiously awaiting its arrival and preparing accordingly. After all, about 70 to 80% of the content on this channel is Steam-centric, and I would imagine that whenever the system actually comes out, it'll probably be closer to 90% in 2026, so naturally I'm already rolling around games that I want to play, just weird stuff that I want to try with the system period, and by extension the videos that I'm most excited to make whenever I do finally get my hands on it. So that's what today's video is all about, are some of the things that I'm already thinking about, planning for, or just lining up to purchase in advance of the Steam Machine's arrival. And in typical fashion, let's go ahead and start with the external stuff like the form factor of the system and furniture and accessories and that kind of thing, and then we'll work more towards the inside of the system and talk about things like games and software. But before I can even think about anything I actually want to do with the Steam Machine, I have to actually, buy one. And the truth is, I'm still not 100% certain which model I'm going to go for, so I guess that's the first thing I'm doing to prepare, is actually deciding what combination of Valve's new hardware to purchase. Like, should I just stick with the Steam controller and the Steam Machine, or should I also throw the Steam frame into the mix, despite the fact that most of my VR time is really just spent playing Beat Saber? And when it comes to the Steam Machine, I'm really not sure which model to go for. Do I actually need the 2TB model of the Steam Machine, or can I just get the 512 and just lean on infinitely expandable SD card storage to hold all of my games moving forward? So yeah, there are just still things to consider about what I actually want to buy from Valve whenever those pre-orders go live, and I guess in a way this video is me just kind of working through some of that out loud. But regardless of what combination of hardware and options I ultimately decide on whenever pre-orders finally go live, I know at an absolute minimum I'm definitely getting the Steam Machine, and to that end, another way that I've already started preparing for its arrival is I've already made space for it both down here next to my desk, and also in my living room under my TV where my Xbox Series X used to be, which admittedly does feel kind of disrespectful. And while it does feel like I'm getting ahead of myself at least a little bit by pre-running an HDMI cable for a system that may not arrive here for months, I'm that excited for it, and as soon as that system does come out, I just want to be able to drop it immediately into my entertainment center, fire it up, do whatever updates are required, and just get to playing immediately. However, more practically speaking, because I know I'm not going to be playing the Steam Machine exclusively in my living room, and a lot of it's going to actually happen back here where I can capture footage more effectively with my capture card, I've also cleared a space back here as well and have an HDMI cable ready to go, so that I can hopefully just move it very easily between the two locations. Because even though I'm excited to just chill out with the Steam Machine and play a bunch of games that I've already played on the Steam Deck, or try out emulation, or just buy big beefy new games and take advantage of that 6 times increase in hardware, realistically speaking, I know I also have to spend a lot of time with the Steam Machine making content for here on the channel, so to that end I do have to consider, practically speaking, how I'm going to best be able to capture gameplay footage from it and just take notes and make sure that I have it within easy reach, especially if I'm doing like tutorial heavy content where it's not just capturing gameplay footage, but kind of doing a real-time breakdown of, some weird, application or plugin or whatever it is that I'm testing on it. And to that end, something else that I've been thinking a lot about when it comes to the Steam Machine's arrival is how I'm best going to capture gameplay footage from it for videos. Now, in all likelihood, I'll probably maintain the same setup that I have now, which typically the way I capture footage from the Steam Deck is just by hooking it up to an Elgato capture card and then doing my capture through OBS on my Mac, and then just playing in real time off of the capture window. But the thing is, the Steam Deck, and by extension the Steam Machine, which also runs SteamOS, should have built-in native video recording, kind of the same way I do on my PS5, and that's true, but from what I've tested it on the Steam Deck, it seems like even though I can capture clips effectively and edit them within the SteamOS interface, actually getting them to a usable format to move elsewhere is kind of a chore that takes a while, and I'm not sure if that's because the process of exporting it to like a standard MP4 or something for me to edit with just takes longer on the Steam Deck because it's less powerful. Maybe that'll be a quicker process on the Steam Machine, I'm not sure, but I am definitely excited to test it, and it's something I'm thinking about a lot because I'm sure I'll be capturing hundreds of hours of footage in a long enough timeline. But there might be some middle ground option between exclusively leaving it in my living room like the PlayStation 5 normally is, and having it down here all the time hooked up to the Mac for direct capture of footage. Instead, what I might do is find a piece of hardware that's just a standalone capture device that dumps files to an SD card, which would be a lot easier than just carting the Steam Machine back and forth. I mean, occasionally I would still have to do it for tutorials like I already mentioned, but yeah, I think at one point I used an AverMedia Live Gamer Portable Plus, I think that is right, which would do like a 4K pass-through and then also allow me to capture footage in 1080p, but I don't know if I still have that card, so I'll have to go digging around in some old hardware to see, but yeah, suffice it to say I may be buying a new capture card just for the Steam Machine, but we'll see what happens. And that's probably a good place to segue into the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot are the accessories that I actually want to pick up for the Steam Machine. And I'm trying to break those down into basically essential and non-essential, right? Stuff that I really feel like I have to have, and then stuff that's just kind of nice to have but sort of silly. Now on the nice to have front, I mean, maybe it would be nice to have like, one or two extra Steam controllers if I ever do like couch co-op or have a bunch of friends play like a local game, probably a beat 'em up like Scott Pilgrim or something like that. But something else that I'm definitely thinking of in terms of convenience for the Steam machine is, even though it is effectively a game console, or at least it will look and feel like a game console in my living room, it's still a fully fledged PC. And to that end, I do want to find like a mouse and keyboard combo, or maybe just one of those keyboard and trackpad combos that will let me have easy control of it whenever I need to when I'm sitting in the living room. Because I've played enough of the Steam Deck to know that inevitably, sooner or later, I am going to have to interact with the game's launcher in a way that's not going to be able to get done with using just the controller, or I'm going to have to enter some credentials somewhere, or edit an INI file, or something that is going to be best lent to an actual mouse and keyboard, and I don't have one that's just dedicated to that living room space yet, but it's definitely one of the things that I'm scoping out as we get closer to the Steam machine's pre-order details. And on the essentials front, obviously at least one SD card is going to be top of the list for me, because like I mentioned in that first things that I put on a new Steam Deck video from a few weeks back, I do like to organize my storage in a very specific way. Like I keep my forever games on the internal storage, so the stuff that I really want to play just for me is always there and accessible, and I'm never tempted to delete it to clear space for something else. And then I use the SD card where I put experimental games or backlog games or games that I'm just kind of dabbling in because, I'm making a video out of it, so that I don't, again, get tempted to delete something I really want to play just in the moment because I'm scrambling and, well, just planned very poorly, I guess. And the other thing to consider about the Steam machine in particular is it is 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck, so I'm going to be way more tempted to put big, beefy AAA games on it that are going to tax the system a lot harder, because a lot of those games that I played on the Steam Deck might have run serviceably or just straight up bad in some cases. So because I'll be doing a lot of testing of that nature, it makes sense for me to make sure I have tons of space available, because big, beefy games take up a ton of space. But since we're already talking about games, now's probably a good time for me to go ahead and talk about some of the games that I'm already planning for in advance of the Steam machine's release. And one of the ways I've been preparing for the games that I want to play first on the Steam machine is by going back and looking at old videos and scripts to find games that maybe played on the Steam Deck technically, but maybe they didn't play that great, because I definitely want to revisit some of those and see how they run on the Steam machine versus the Steam Deck. Hogwarts Legacy springs to mind. And part of that process is I'm kind of going back through my Steam library right now and making a collection just called Steam Machine Testing, and dropping games in there that I definitely want to play and check out whenever the system arrives. But beyond just revisiting and I guess reevaluating games that I played on the Steam Deck initially on the Steam machine, I'm also taking a closer look at third-party multi-platform releases that historically I would have gotten on the PlayStation 5, Xbox, or Switch, and I might just start leaning more towards Steam for those. Not for everything, of course. For like mega established franchises where I love like collecting physical stuff, like Resident Evil, for example, I'm almost certainly still going to get those on PlayStation because I've been collecting on that platform for decades at this point, I guess. But for upcoming releases that I'm kind of on the fence about, or you know what I mean, it's not a game that's necessarily like one of your ride or die all-time favorites, but you still want to get a copy of it, I think those I might start actually picking up on Steam from here on out instead of the PS5 or Xbox, if the Steam machine really is going to give me a reliable console-like experience, which, based on my history with SteamOS so far, I predicted it will do exactly that. But beyond just games, I'm also really excited to test out a range of different applications on it because, again, just like its little big brother, I guess, with the Steam Deck, even though it does look like a game console, and that's its primary use case, of course, it is still a fully fledged mid-range PC, and to that end, there's a lot you're going to be able to do with it. And for the first time ever, even though it will be kind of a low-key version of a PC, I will have a full-blown PC just chilling in my living room for the first time since, I think I put Linux on my PS3 back in the day, but that was really more of a curiosity than anything, and this has some really exciting implications. I mean, emulation's a given, right? Of course I'm going to load that thing up with EmuDeck or some other comparable emulation suite as soon as I get my hands on it, but there are also probably a lot of other cool things I can do with it that I haven't considered because I just don't often think about a PC within a living room context. And one of the obvious use cases for me to beyond just playing games is it could be just a really great media PC for your living room. So yeah, to wrap this whole thing up, even though the Steam machine is probably a few months out at this point, I'm still very excited for it, and I've already begun clearing space for it, figuring out what accessories I'm going to grab, the games I'm most excited to test first, or I guess I should say the types of games I want to test, which that will probably be a video in its own right, and ultimately just testing out a bunch of weird stuff on this device, and then reporting my findings back here in video form. But hey, what about you? Are there any preparations that you are making for the Steam machine, or something that I haven't considered here? If so, I would love to hear about it in the comments below. And coming up on the channel, we will be taking a look, finally, after weeks of testing, at the Analog 3D, because I have had a blast returning to my childhood in 1996 and playing a ton of N64 games lately. So stay tuned for that, and no doubt the N64 games to play on your Steam Deck video that will inevitably follow. As always, thanks so much for your time and hanging out here with me on the channel. It really means a lot to me. Have an amazing day, and I will see you on the next one.